Good afternoon. This is John Davis, and I'm here with another webinar on post-accident procedures for Linehaul contractors. And I know this is a lot when we as contractors have an accident and making sure that we have the right information. Do we have the best information that's going to protect us and help us to handle these things and make sure that we lessen the problems in litigation and lessen the problems with Linehaul? Let me get into it. The mile high view of everything with an accident is understanding what you need to be thinking about. When I teach this to folks, the mindset that I want you to have is to freeze time. That's really what we're trying to do, is freeze everything that happened at the time of the accident. An accident happens at 2 o'clock in the morning and we need to figure out what's going on and we need to collect information and all this stuff. We're trying to freeze what happened at 2 o'clock in the morning and collecting all of the information, that we have it and that we keep it and we don't lose it. That's another problem I see in a lot of operations, is one person could have the accident investigation on their computer. They leave the company. It's 2 years later because of the statute of limitations. And oh my goodness, we can't find that information now because that person left. So that's some of the things we'll talk about. But thinking about, all right, we've had an accident. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Let's say that it was a side swipe accident, and that's what's going on. Is we're trying to start off everything with understanding the who, what, when, where, and how of the accident. Again, freezing time. And then we're trying to preserve evidence based on, the way I explain it to folks is any accident can result in litigation. You can be in a courtroom. You as the AOBC driver can be in a courtroom, in a witness stand, discussing this accident that happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. Did you do the right things? Did you collect the right things? Did you make sure everything was done? That's phase one, is you're trying to figure out that who, what, when, where, and how, and a good understanding of everything. The other thing that I want you to get comfortable with is when a driver tells you what happened in an accident. A lot of times when I'm talking to drivers, I go, explain this like I'm 5 years old, because they'll go, it was a lane change. The other car hit me in the passenger side of the tractor. Okay, what lane? Is it a 3-lane highway, 4-lane highway, 5-lane highway? What lane were you in? Where did the other car make contact with the tractor or the trailers? Was it in the front fender? Was it at the door? Was it at the fuel tank? Was it at the drive tires? Was it at the lead trailer, the front part, the side, the back, the dolly, the pup trailer? You see what I'm saying? Is really get into the details of what is going on and keep asking the questions until you have a good idea of what happened. I think where we get in trouble is we get an initial discussion with a driver. We talk to him. Oh yeah, the car sideswiped me. And you're thinking, oh, I'll just get the Vetter video and I'll see what's going on. A lot of times you can't see anything in the Vetter video of what happened. So really get into what really happened there. And then say in mile high again is getting all that back end information that you need for your accident investigation. And then finally, after the accident, is my driver going to need curative training? Should I do training anyway, even though it's not required to do curative training? Do I need to do an analysis on preventability? Do I need to, is it my driver's fault? And fault and preventability are two different things. I'm thinking of an accident recently where our driver is in the left lane. It's a 3-lane highway. Car is in the far right lane and runs off the road, hits the Jersey wall, spins across all 3 lanes in front of our driver in the left lane. We hit him in the door. Driver's not at fault because the other driver spun out and went in front of the other driver. But under the definitions of preventability, because we struck that car in the driver's door, any strike of a car in the side of the vehicle is automatically preventable regardless of what the fault is. You got to have a good understanding of, okay, my driver's not at fault, but is the driver preventable in the accident and all this? And really why the driver got hit with preventable in that accident is the driver saw all of this going on with that car spinning around and from the Jersey wall mile across the 3 lane and never hit the brake, never slowed down, never reacted to what was going on in front of them. And that's what caught them in that to be preventable. You need to have procedures for your drivers. And I want you to think about the human. And I want you to really start thinking about this in all of your operations. I just did an on-site visit with a contractor at multiple terminals this week. And we're looking into trucks. I'm looking at the permit books. I'm looking at the motive manual. I'm looking at blank log books, looking at the hazardous material guide and all of that. And then I'm looking at the accident packet, and some trucks had them, some trucks didn't. Some had accident instructions, some didn't. So I want you to think about the human that's in your truck and, okay, you had an accident. What do you have prepared for that human in the truck to get an accident packet with instructions on what they're supposed to do and the different things that's supposed to be in that accident packet to be ready for them to respond to the accident. After this, I want you to think about your trucks on how you have them organized in your documents. First, do I have an accident packet in the truck? Yes. Do I have all the things that I'm going to talk about today in that accident packet? Yes. Have I trained the driver on how to use the accident packet? Yes. Those type of things. And then physically and verbally talking to your drivers during your onboarding process of what to do after an accident. So right here, step 1, stop and secure. Step 2, medical triage. Step 3, the positional discipline. Going through the steps on this, I think we get, I don't know if it's calm or we just assume that the driver knows what to do after an accident. They could be injured, they could be scared, they could be nervous that they're going to lose their job. There could be multiple things that could happen that everything leaves their brain and I don't know what to do after this. And I have this where drivers will get out and they'll admit liability and they don't do the right thing, or they leave the scene of the accident or something like that. You've got to create those written policies and procedures, have them in the truck, tell them what to do after an accident, what to expect, who to call, what all the steps are in this. I really want you to think about that as you are doing your training with not only your drivers, but your BCs, because I want the BCs to be trained also on this is what the process is for our contract and our operation, that this is how we handle this. So if you think about what I just said about admitting liability and things like that, we don't want drivers admitting liability. We don't want them saying, I'm sorry. We don't want them to say anything about, oh, my bad, I was in the wrong lane or whatever. Really, what you want to train your driver to do is to just have a discussion with, I will collect the information from this accident scene and I will report it to my manager. That's all they have to say. That's it. Nothing else, not my fault, not who's going to pay for this or anything like that. We don't need to be thinking or talking about that. I've had some interesting things that have happened, especially in winter, where there's been an accident with another vehicle and the passenger of the other vehicle has gotten into the cab of our truck to stay warm, and the Vetter video has recorded the entire conversation of the other person saying, oh, my bad, it was my fault. It's interesting seeing, the thousands of accidents that we see on some of these different things, but talk to your driver about this, that do not admit guilt, liability, my fault, I was the cause of this, anything like that. Going back to the accident packet, and I've seen a bunch of different accident packets in the Linehaul operation from doing physical inspections at different terminals and trucks and things like that. You can have them electronically. where the driver can get to it. I've seen some where the contractor has put the accident packet on the tablet, the ELD tablet, and they get it there. I've seen some that the contractor has built Google Forms for free for the driver to fill out and that type of thing. I've seen the folders, manila folders in the cab with the different things. Whatever you think is best for your operation, and it may be a couple of them. So let's say you come up with an electronic format for collecting the accident information, but you also put an accident packet in the tractor for them also. Think about what works best for you. On the packet, what I always suggest is to get an envelope. You can either get the envelopes printed, from your office printer, just run the envelope through with the accident instructions right on the outside. First thing is do not admit liability or guilt, determine injuries, call 911, report to the manager. That's really what the instructions are there. Putting in a sample accident report. You can get a sample accident report. If you're one of our customers, you can get it from us, or you can get one off of MyGroundBiz and have at least a format of what it should be. You really are trying to get the who, what, when, where, and how information on the accident report. Don't download an accident report from the internet, the Google, that's 6 pages long. Your driver's not going to fill that out. You really are trying to collect the contact information from all the parties that are involved and the facts of what's going on. This is important. This is in the training with your BCs. This is in the training with your drivers. All of this information is discoverable in litigation. So what's the danger here? Putting statements in accident records that, the other person was mean. They cussed me out. I didn't like them. They were an idiot. Putting any type of statement in that into an accident document, I want you to think about this. It will be blown up 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide in front of a jury, and it'll be read to the jury with you in the witness stand. I've seen it happen. So think about that when you're collecting this information and your driver's filling out this information. Hey driver, I need you to fill out the accident report and the driver statement and the accident packet. Just stick to the facts. Don't add anything else in there about anything on what your personal feeling of the other humans that were involved in the accident on there. And that's crucial. Again, I've seen it bite companies hard with just disparaging statements put into this kind of stuff. And, you as an AO, if you're have an accident, you need to be reviewing this information to make sure, okay, that this makes sense on what's in the accident report and the driver statement and things like that. The other thing you want to do is, let's say there is 2 people in the other car that hit your truck. Well, there's 2 parties in there. Okay, it's Mrs. Smith is the passenger and Mr. Smith was the driver. We need the names of both of the people in that vehicle and their contact information. Getting a picture of the license plate of the other car. Oh, they had a tow truck company come out. Great. Which tow truck company was it? Oh, it was ABC Towing. Oh, okay. Did you get a business card from that tow truck company? Okay. Did an ambulance come to the scene? Great. Which ambulance came? Was it the city ambulance? Was it the county ambulance? Was it an ambulance from another joining community? You see what I'm saying is get into the details of who is responding and who was there. Same with law enforcement. Was it the local police department? Was it the sheriff? Was it a constable? Was it the highway patrol? Who responded to the scene on that? And getting that information and going through there. I think it's a great idea. I think it's such a great idea. I put it twice on this slide. The scene diagram. You can get those And it's just basically trying to put different highway configurations on there and have your driver to draw that. Another great thing that you can do that will really give you the aha moment is go into your Vetter system and or your ELD system and get the latitude and longitude. That's a crucial piece right there. It's one thing to say the accident happened on, Interstate 40 at mile marker 20. It's another thing to have the latitude and longitude and know exactly that it's on Interstate 40. It was actually at mile marker 43, in between 43 and 44, and it was in the western bound lane and not the eastern bound lane. So if you do that, then you can take that latitude and longitude, go to Google Earth, drop the latitude and longitude in there, get a bird's eye view of the area where the accident happened. So when you're talking to your driver, you can go, okay, I've got satellite view pulled up. You're on Interstate 40. You're in the middle lane. I see that. There's a bridge right ahead of you. Is that correct? Yes, that is right there. Okay, and this car was over. You see where that can give you context on getting a better understanding of where this happened. And the great thing about using something like Google Earth is you get that screenshot and then you open up your screenshot and annotate it. You can draw an arrow. From talking to the driver, he was hit right here on the passenger side at the fuel tank, and draw a little arrow, point of impact. Looking at the Vetter video, the driver was doing 57 miles per hour. You can put a scene together from that Google Earth picture to really help you understand what's going on. Witness cards, basically what I suggest, cheapest way, one sheet of paper, and you divide the one Word document, I should say, not a sheet of paper, one Word document. You create a table with the witness information, name, phone number, email, their address, and you could put the license plate in there. You create a table and then just copy that table and put it on the bottom half of the form. So you actually have two of those witness cards on one sheet of paper. When you print it out, you fold it up, you put it in your accident packet, and that's just a super simple way of making that form with that information. Again, I was in multiple terminals this week looking at trucks. I was talking to the drivers about red tag procedures. Number one had the red tags in there, but I came up to, driver, do you have a pen in the truck? An ink pen? No. Think about that in your accident packet. Put a couple of pens in there. You want them to fill out this information, and if you don't put the tools in for the human to do what you need them to do, then it's not going to get done, and it's going to be problematic. And make sure in your operation that you have your permit book, your ELD book, or you combine them both, your hazmat guide, your blank log book, and your accident packet in the same place in every tractor. Reviewing with drivers this week, I was doing mock DOT audits. I put the driver up in the seat, closed the door, opened the door, and said, driver, show me your permit book. Okay, here is the door. Show me the ELD manual. Here it is. Then I started asking for the blank logbook. I know it's around here somewhere. It's in the overhead, or it's in the glove box, or it's over here under the seat. You see where that's problematic when the human can't find what you are providing for them. So organize your tractors and make sure they're all exactly the same. And then go to the next step. Driver, if you're in an accident, you see this packet right here in the doorway? That's what I want you to reach for as you call me or safety, whoever you have them call. So scene documentation. This is really about taking photographs. And at the bottom here, we do not want photographs of injured people, period. You're going to tell your drivers that. You're going to have it in a written policy. You're going to tell them, do not take pictures. You wouldn't want a picture taken of you that your leg was broken or anything like that. But we do want to get photos of the damage to the vehicles and out away from the scene to give context. Remember what I said a minute ago. You're going to go to Google Earth. You're going to get the latitude and longitude. You're going to put that in. You're going to get, the satellite view of this. And then these photographs are going to complement that Google Earth view of looking at everything going, okay, this is making more sense on that. And same thing with the diagram for the driver. Making sure that you train the driver to take pictures of the damage to the tractor, but not 2 inches away from the damage, 4 to 5 feet away from the damage, maybe an up close of it. Think about adding context to the damage. Okay, I took a close up of a dent in the side of the truck. Can I put my finger or a pin or a quarter or something next to it to give context into the photo of what I just took? Then, if it's safe, and again, you've got to tell your drivers this. Driver, if it's safe, can you get 4 corners of the scene? Can you walk, here and take a photo? Can you walk over here and take a photo? Over here. You see, that's giving more context of what's going on. The problem I see all the time in accidents, and remember I handle thousands of them, is I get all these up close pictures of damage of the tractor, the trailer, the other car, but no context of the scene of what's going on and things like that. Getting a picture of the damage of the other car. Give you an example. Your driver is at a stoplight. There's a four-wheeler in front of them, and they're not paying attention. They take their foot off the brake and they roll into the car in front of them. A great picture to take is the rear bumper of the car in front of you showing absolutely no damage to the bumper. Because what's going to happen? 2 to 3 nights from that accident, they're going to be sitting on the couch watching TV. A commercial is going to come on, and it's going to be one of the lawyers saying, "Have you been hit by a big truck? If so, call us and we'll sue them." They're going to do that. You're getting that documentation that there was no damage to help lessen the severity of the claim and to prove that, look, there was no damage. There wasn't even a transfer of paint to that bumper. And, what you can add from the other driver on your accident report is what's called a res geste statement. It's statements immediately after the accident because those are admissible in court. That's why we don't say we're at fault and we admit liability, because it's admissible in court. But if the other person said, "Oh, my bad, I slammed on brakes or I didn't see you and you hit me," that is appropriate to put in the statement. Driver Smith stated that it was their fault and they did X, Y, and Z to cause the accident. That is an allowable statement, not a statement that Mr. Smith was an idiot. So just think about that. But really work with your drivers on taking photos. This is a great thing to talk about during a safety meeting. You're holding a safety meeting at the terminal. You've got a driver that's getting ready to leave. They got a tractor, 2 trailers hooked up. They're out there. They're getting ready to roll. Hey, let's go out real quick and let's practice taking photos, up close, 5 feet back, 50 feet back, adding something in the picture for context. It's really going to help you. This is the kind of thing that can change your accident outcome from a $1,000 claim to a $100,000 claim because you have better documentation of what happened to refute what the other person, the other party is saying against you. So really, you're going to hear me say this a lot today, is really hone in on the human skills of what you're trying to get them to do. And as we have video training for the drivers on what to do after an accident. It's not the same from the AO to get with the BC and the BC. Are we crystal clear on the procedures? Yes, boss, I'm crystal clear. Are the drivers crystal clear on the procedures? Yes. Okay. then you're in a lot better position in handling this. So when you are collecting all of this information, I want you to think about the different things that are in addition to what is in the accident pack. You could have the police report, the crash report. You could have a tow truck bill report, information on there. You could have information on different things from the ambulance. Your driver was taken to the hospital by ambulance after the accident and things like that. It may not hold information about what occurred in the accident, but guess what's on all of those documents? Date, time. So that's further strengthening what your investigation is, because if the police report says it happened at 10:31 p.m. and then you got a tow truck company that said they responded at 2:30 in the morning, that could happen. But there's different pieces of information that you can collect that will help strengthen your case down there. This is a big one. I bet a lot of the people that are listening to this go into the closed Facebook group, and we'll see. There was one last week where someone had posted a video that we had dropped a trailer in the middle of the interstate. There's plenty of times that we post accident photos in there and things like that. Please stop doing that. That is not the way we want to do this. I know we think it's helping with awareness and it's helping, but if it's an active investigation, a lot of folks don't know this, is in an accident investigation, when they are getting with your driver, taking the deposition, they're collecting information on your driver prior to their deposition. They're going to get the cell phone records of your driver. They're going to know that if they were on the phone, were they texting, what were they doing at the time of the accident. The other thing that they're going to get is they're going to ask for the social media accounts for your driver, the Facebook, the TikTok, the WhatsApp, Telegram, every single thing. The first thing the lawyer is going to do is send a notification to the FedEx attorney. Says, please preserve all social media accounts. Okay, think about that. Accident happens on Monday. The driver says that they're going through a massive divorce on Facebook on Sunday. Go into the mind of the driver. Oh, I was at a keg party the day before, the night before. Oh, look at all this. All of that will be used against you in a court of law. All of it is discoverable. It's just, I've seen it. They'll just get all the social media posts, and the drivers that get on social media and rant about things, they'll publish that to the jury. Look at what this driver does. Look at this party they went to. Look at this family crisis they had. All of that's going to go to being in this litigation on this accident. Here's a big one. We have to report any accident to Linehaul that involves bodily injury and property damage. If you go to Schedule E of your contract, it states that in the contract that you must report bodily injury or property damage to Linehaul. And that should be as soon as possible. What it does not say is for your driver to report it to Linehaul. And here's where it's problematic, where the driver thinks they had an accident. They got the tire off the pavement. This was an accident that I talked to a contractor this week. They got the tire off the pavement, and the driver called Linehaul and reported as an accident, and it was 45 points on their SRS report and all that. It wasn't an accident. There was no property damage in that incident. So you need to have a written policy and verbal training. BC needs to be on the same page and the driver's on the same page. If there is an accident, the only person with your contract that is to report an accident is the authorized officer. Really think about what it is. You may have initial facts that are completely wrong. Hey boss, another car sideswiped me. What does that really mean? I just went through a whole thing about what you need to do on your investigation, and that's what you want to talk to your drivers. I need to do an investigation so I can get the correct information up to Linehaul. So if you have them report it to the BC, BC better be calling the AO to do that. There is reporting inside of My Ground Biz, and you want to do that. But if you have a quarter of the information or half of the information from the driver and you start filling out the report in My Ground Biz and submitting it, then you don't have it. Now, I'm not telling you to wait 24, 36 hours, 72 hours. You do need to report it ASAP to them, but get that information correct before you report it, and have your drivers and your BCs follow the chain of command on who reports accidents up to Linehaul. And that will solve you a lot of problems. Same thing with trailer disconnects, same thing with pulling trailers off the door. A lot of times Linehaul knows about that. Great. Have the AO talk to Linehaul about that. That's just where you need to be. We talked about the accident packet, talked about the Google Earth screenshot, we talked about photographs, we talked about getting the driver statement and filling out the accident packet and things like that. Here's the other things to get. So get the last 8 days of logs. Again, I want you to think about where we are in the world. You pass the billboards on the way to your operation all the time that says we handle truck accidents, we sue trucking companies and all that. Well, there's a thing called a statute of limitations. So an accident can happen today, like in the state of Florida. We could have it where we're not at fault, they close it, they didn't pursue it. But in the state of Florida, where I'm sitting right now, it's a 4-year statute of limitations. So they could get a lawyer one day before that 4-year statute of limitations runs and file a lawsuit to protect filing the claim. So that's 4 years later. Do you still have the same BC? Do you still have the same driver? Do you still have the same admin person? Do you have that? I want you to really think about where it is. If it was me, if I'm the AO, I have a Google Drive, a Dropbox, whatever you use. The BC can do the investigation and all that, but it better be moved up to where I have control of it and that I review it and see everything, that we make sure that we get that. So get the 8 days of logs for a run-of-the-mill accident. If it is a serious accident, serious injuries, fatality, I've had some accidents that involve suicide, any of those, you need to download in PDF format 6 months of logs. They're going to ask for them. Again, statute of limitations, 4 years in Florida, 2 years in a lot of states. You get there and you don't download those logs and have them in the accident investigation, and they ask for, I want to see the entire history of those logs, you may get a spoliation of evidence claim, and that can be problematic for you. Same thing on the vetter. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I prepare for vetter videos, but if it's a serious accident, fatality, serious injury and all that, you may need to get 30 minutes of video, an hour of video, 2 hours of video, because everybody in the jury box is wanting to know what happened leading up to that crash. Now there's the other side of the house, and I bet there's somebody putting a question in the question right now. Well, you don't save the logs, don't get the video, don't do this. That's one strategy. That is a strategy that you can use. The FMCSA regulation only requires 6 months of logs. It's 2 years later. We don't have to keep it. Things like that. But in practicality of being in the courtroom, I have testified in court over 150 times, state and federal. I have been in that hot seat. I have had those questions. When you don't have the information, then the opposing counsel uses the red herring technique. Same thing with like drug and alcohol. Well, if you didn't do a drug and alcohol test after the accident, well, the driver could have been impaired. There's a lot of legal arguments that can happen to make sure that doesn't get to the jury, but a lot of times you lose that. So then you get a statement out, well, they could have been impaired, or they could have been horrible at their logs, but we don't know because they didn't save this stuff, or they could have had more video that showed something bad. What I really want is 15 minutes before the accident, driver's doing everything right and just got into a bad spot on where the accident happened, because that will really help you on that. So think about that in pulling this information. Weather data, again, the latitude and longitude, you're not putting in, let's say, going back to my Interstate 40, I'm in Arkansas, Conroy, Arkansas on Interstate 40. The weather could be there, but you really want to put the latitude and longitude in there and download the weather report. This is what that weather was at that time. Plus, talking to your driver. What was the weather like? Was it snowing? No, but it was icy. It was icy. There was some patches that were out there. Okay, that's okay. Thank you for letting me know that. Was there fog? Was there fog and smoke? Some of the most horrific accidents we've had in the United States with trucking is where fog and forest fire smoke mixes, and you have these 200 truck and vehicle pileups. Getting really what's going on with the weather. Was it raining? Yes. Don't stop there. Was it misting? Were the wipers at full motion? No. Was it just doing that intermittent? Yeah, I was doing that. Was there standing water on the highway? Was there hydroplaning going on? Anything like that? Get into those details as you're going through all this. And as you collect all that information, make sure it gets to the AO, the head person of the operation, that they have control of it because of turnover. All right, Vetter video. How much time do I have? On Vetter video, when I submit Vetter video to either Linehaul or law enforcement, it's 1 minute before and 1 minute after. You may download 15, 20 minutes or whatever, but you really just want to submit 1 minute before and 1 minute after. And you're just going to have to learn to open the video. Let's say you're using Motive and you download 10 minutes of video and you find your video. You're going to have to figure out how to trim that, because you don't want to send in the whole thing. Keep it into that 1 minute before, 1 minute after. I do get asked a lot, am I allowed to give the video to law enforcement? The short answer is we prefer you say, let me talk to my manager on that. But a lot of times the officer is going, especially if it's a fatality or a serious accident or something like that, they need it to understand what's happening. And you need to get that video downloaded 1 minute before, 1 minute after, and shoot it over to the officer so that they can see it, because it can go bad in a hurry on that. Think about your cameras. So things that are happening in the network is you have a camera in the truck and, we have an SD card problem, SD card failure. Or, Motive cameras don't have an SD card in there, but I had an accident about a month ago where the camera was showing active and everything was fine. And we actually had the camera download the entire internal memory on there. It was Vetter video for every day except the day of the accident. It wasn't on there. So you got to be thinking about, okay, I'm trying to get the video out of the camera or the dashboard, but if there's problems with that, you've got to document what the problem is. So in that instance, the truck was at a shop near 299 in Savannah. They had it in the shop. They had an IT guy at that shop. It was an outside shop. IT guy at that shop had to get a thumb drive, hook it up to the Motive camera, download the entirety of the camera. They had to overnight it to me, to my house in Florida. I had to get it, look at it, to double check it. I mean, that's what we went through to try to secure the video after that accident. So if you get into the dashboard And each better vendor is different. So Ground Cloud is, I think you can download 10 minutes at a time. So you really got to know what time and the time zone it is. I think Motive is like that. Lytics has some more scrubbing availability for you to find the video, but make sure that you get the right portion of the video. If none of that works, then you're going to have to do a hard stop on your driver and that camera and get either the SD card or the video out of that camera, and make sure that you get it to, a secure location. Send it by overnight that's trackable and all that, because there's a thing on chain of custody that it left the driver, went into this FedEx package, arrived at your house or office or whatever, you received it, you keep that FedEx package that shows that the chain of custody of what happened there, to make sure that you get all this. And then I had this discussion with the drivers, and recently, it wasn't this week because we were doing mock DOT inspections, but think about your onboarding with your drivers, especially with your BCs, and doing the mock DOT inspection, your driver's in the seat in the cab. Your BC needs to have a discussion with the driver in an authoritative voice that says, driver, I want to make this perfectly clear. If you cover that camera, if you mess with that camera, you pull that camera down, you disengage it, you put a smudge on it, you put your hat over it, you put a piece of tape on it, I am going to fire you as soon as I find this out. I see this all the time where the camera is covered. Here is what's going on with that situation. If that camera is not working, is covered up, it's being obstructed, not only are you getting a preventable accident, even though your driver wasn't at fault for the accident, because you will get a preventable accident as soon as you turn in the video, then you get a whole nother issue in litigation. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what was this driver hiding while she going down the road? That is where it's really going to blow up on you. So when I say you better have a discussion with your drivers that says, if you cover my camera up, I'm terminating you, I'm serious on that. That is how serious it is. This is how I get these contractors that are at a tier 4 and 5, and they'll have a driver, they'll let them slide on that, they get in this accident, oh, it wasn't the driver's fault, get the 45 points on their SRS report, now they're at tier 3. Then they go to tier 2, then they're at tier 1. Then they're OTC'd, and then they're non-renewed. You see how important this is on protecting your company, to make sure that we have this. And then if you see it in the vetter videos on this, then you're talking to your driver and says, I'm telling you to terminate them immediately, because if you do it one driver, the rest of them will fall in line. But if you have a one strike rule or whatever, then it's a hard talk with that driver that says, if you touch that camera again, you're out. So think about that. And then the last thing on the vetter videos is you need to make sure that you go to the dashboard in the vetter system. Try to get your BC or you or whatever about once a week to just do a quick look at the device page. Just navigate to devices and see that they're all active, and that you should be able, I know you can in Motive, I think you can in Lytics, and I'm not sure in Ground Cloud, but you should be able to set a notification if a camera goes inactive to give you that notification, so you don't have to do what I just said. But this is, I can't tell you, it's happened hundreds of times where the AO and the BC thinks the camera's working right, and they have an incident, especially in the yard, where it's a gate incident or something like that, something minor, and then they can't produce the better video, and then it becomes disaster. Remember, there's an indemnity, and the indemnity is a checklist after an accident. And think about what the checklist is. Think about the tractor build sheet. Does your tractor meet the contract requirements of safety technology? Do you have the FCAM? Do you have the vetter? Do you have the ELD? Check, 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 check. Do you have the vetter camera in there? Is it working? Check. Did your driver do their monthly safety training prior to the accident? Check. It's a big one there. If you get those checks in there, then your indemnity is very low. If you start having unchecked boxes on that list, you're looking at up to $75,000 indemnity, and that is coming out of your settlement. So that's how important all of this is making sure that you are meeting the contract requirements on that. If you had that happen a couple of times, you're going to get OTC'd, and then you're facing, even harsher consequences on that. And then finally on the video, I don't think it registers, or we don't think about this. Again, if your driver is doing everything right, they're not at fault for the accident, but you get this 1 minute before and 1 minute after, and you submit it to Linehaul, and your driver's not wearing their seatbelt. They're speeding over the speed limit. The camera's covered. They're holding their cell phone. They're doing something. Even though that is a non-preventable accident that happened, you're going to get hit with a preventable accident, because that's what Linehaul's going to say. Your driver was conducting unsafe behavior at the time of the accident, and it's going to be a preventable accident. There is just nothing you can do about it. So as you're training your drivers during the onboarding process, and that's the other thing, I don't care they came from another contractor. Don't assume they know what the procedures are. When they come to your contract, this is the way we run our shop. This is the way it's going to happen. And make sure that you cover. There's just so much at stake on your business staying in business from the video camera, and, looking at a $75,000 indemnity, litigation costs, claim cost, a whole bunch of different things can really affect your operation and your livelihood, just because we weren't following the right procedures, or we didn't train our drivers on the right procedures. So for our clients, every time a driver calls us, the calls are recorded. And, what I suggest, we have drivers from a lot of different backgrounds. And like this week, I had drivers from South America, I had drivers from Russia, I had drivers from the Middle East, I had drivers from the United States, I had drivers from China, all in one operation. So getting a written statement from the driver is one thing, but you may want to also get a recorded statement. Remember, if that driver leaves and it's 4-year statute and that driver is gone, then you may want to get, stick to the facts. Don't add all the other stuff, but stick to the facts of tell me what happened so you can preserve it. So if someone calls us, it's recorded anyway, and we have it. The claim office, either Gallagher Bassett or ARC Claims, they're taking a recorded statement from your driver. But the problem with the recorded statement from ARC Claims or Gallagher Bassett, because I used to run a national claim office for Hartford Insurance for many years, is 24 hours from now, 36 hours from now, 72 hours from now, memory really starts going quickly on what happened. So if you're talking to your driver about this, you may want to consider that. All of this that I'm talking about, I'm talking to my AOs here. This is covering your assets on all of this. And you want to make sure that you have all of this documented properly, and just make sure that you got it all covered. I get this question a lot about crash reports and things like that. So if it's a claim going up to ARC Claims and Gallagher Bassett, those type of entities, same thing. When I was a national claim manager, I had a software program that I could order crash reports. But a lot of times I'm working with an AO trying to dispute the preventability of an accident. And the number one thing that helps with that is getting the crash report. So thinking about what I said earlier, you're talking to the driver. Hey, did law enforcement come? Yes. Who was it? Was it local PD? Was it the sheriff? Was it a constable? Was it the highway patrol? Who was it? Did they give you a card with their badge number and their contact information? Yes. I need you to take a picture of that and send it to me ASAP. That officer will fill out a roadside inspection after a DOT recordable crash. That is a fatality, injury that is transported away from the scene, or tow away from the scene. Those three categories: fatality, injury away from the scene, or tow. That's the driver or the other vehicles. It's anybody involved in the accident. So they do a roadside inspection on that. So ask that question: did the officer, especially if it's the highway patrol, did the officer do a roadside inspection? Yes, I need a copy of that. And then, very important, did the officer issue any citations? None to me, but to the other driver. You're not going to get a copy of it, but that's a valuable piece of information right there to add into your accident investigation. The other driver was cited for the accident. That helps. You're going to see it when you get the crash report. And I can't tell you how to get the crash report because every state is different. I'm just going to tell you the overview of the process. So if an accident happens today, that crash report may not be available for 3 to 7 days from now. So if it's a local PD, you're going to call the local PD because you got their contact information. You remember, you got it from your driver, and say, how do I get the accident report? And they'll tell you what the procedure is. If it's the state, a lot of states have a website you can go to. If you have the crash report number from the officer from that card at the time of the accident, then you can put it into the state website, and it'll tell you it's ready or it's not ready. If it's not ready, then check back in 2 or 3 days and do that. The state's going to charge you for that crash report. And I get some folks would go, well, I don't want to pay for it. You want to pay for it because you need to see what's in it because it's affecting your livelihood to know, did the officer write an entire paragraph at the end? You think it's a non-preventable claim or non-fault accident, and they add an entire paragraph that your driver ran a red light, did this, all this stuff. You need to get that information. And so you understand that. Since I'm on this, before I get to the next thing, fatality accidents or major injuries. The fatality accidents I've handled, the minimum of getting a crash report on a fatality accident is about 6 months. And I'm not kidding about that. It can be up to 12 months, 18 months to get that report. They do a lot of investigation. A lot of times what happens after a bad accident is your tractor is put into legal jail. They red tag your tractor, and if that crash report takes 6 months and the lawyers have to do everything, your tractor is going to be parked for 6 months. That, I'm not kidding about that. That is what happens. So understand that if it's a serious accident, whether your driver's at fault or not at fault, it could take a while to get the accident report. If you're trying to dispute accidents, the first thing, get all your accident investigation. You've learned a lot today on really how to hone in onto the details. Every little detail matters that can change the information. If you think about, you talk to the driver for 5 minutes after an accident, that's nothing major, just a little side swipe, and you report that up to Linehaul, and you didn't do everything that I told you to do in this webinar today, what you find out in your investigation can completely change. But you've already set the ball in motion, and they've already sent it over to safety, and they've already determined it's a preventable accident. You're going to have a whole lot harder time to dispute it and get it turned over after that, after you have more information. But you're going to report claims timely, so I don't want you to delay that. But if a crash report, if you can get it 3-10 days after, whatever, and you get that information and it helps your case to say, I'll give you an example. Had a driver at the top of a ramp, stopped at a red light to make a right-hand turn. He was stopped. He had his turn signal on. He looked for traffic. To the left, no traffic. Makes the right-hand turn. There is a car in the emergency lane trying to pass the tractor on the right-hand side. And it officially got deemed as a preventable accident from the initial information. We got the crash report. We found out that that driver was cited for the accident. The officer had done a great job. Usually officers don't do this. They don't put a whole lot of information about who's at fault or not. But this officer did and put all that information in there, and we were able to submit it up to Linehaul, and they changed it on the SRS report from preventable to non-preventable. So getting that crash report really helps that. Don't try to go dispute an accident with Linehaul with nothing. If you don't have a crash report, unless you have different video or different information, you're not going to get very far with it. With Linehaul and disputes, it really varies by terminal. Some terminal managers really understand the dispute process, really want to work on the dispute, and others may not know how to do the dispute process. The dispute process is on My Ground Biz. If you do find a terminal manager, and maybe they're brand new, just go in My Ground Biz, find the dispute procedures, and then send it to your Linehaul manager and say, I'm just following these procedures, and this is what we're doing. You're going to write a letter stating the facts of your dispute. You're going to attach the crash report. Got those two things, pictures, better video, stating your case, just like you're stating it on I'm trying this at trial. Linehaul, these are the facts that are in my favor on this. And what your goal is to get it up to the Linehaul manager and them to say, yeah, let's talk about this. You want to get a meeting with you, the AO, Linehaul, and regional safety to have a discussion about it. That's really ultimately, and I've been in some of those meetings, and that's what you want to get to have it reviewed. It's not an easy meeting to get, but that's what the goal is. From safety, they're using the 2017 ATA preventability guidelines. Those guidelines are not available on the internet to download. You got to buy them. And when you buy them, you get this little pamphlet that has the guidelines in it. And you're going to go, really? I just spent $35 on this? I highly encourage you to get those guidelines and have a copy available. So I use that because what Linehaul Safety does is they have preventability codes. Like usually when a contractor calls me, I'll go, let me guess, the codes are A1, C1, and O10. And they'll go, how'd you know? I go, that's what I normally see on those codes. When that ATA preventability guideline book are those codes, A1, the description, and how does it work. So you want in your dispute letter to, okay, here is the code, here it is, and why I disagree that my driver acted in a way that made this preventable. There's a second document that is available through the FMCSA through the DataQ website. That document is the Crash Preventability Program. It is a lot better document than the ATA preventability guideline because the ATA preventability guideline, I can't say that word today, is just a bunch of paragraphs and bullet points with information. The crash preventability guideline from the DataQ website has the pictures. It has the pictures of the tractor and trailer and a four-wheeler in the picture. And on one side of this page, it says preventable, and the other side of the page, not preventable. It will show you exactly in about 20 to 25 different scenarios the difference between preventable and non-preventable. So you can use that information on your dispute to say, look, here is the preventability guideline from the FMCSA. They're saying that this type of accident is a non-preventable accident, and I'm attaching this page, the front page and page 32 to my letter here to send it in to say that this is non-preventable. Those are the two authorities out there on this. Again, going back to the very beginning of this, the car that was in the right-hand lane spun into the Jersey walls, went across the 3 lanes. Driver was not at fault, but because the driver didn't react or hit the brakes or anything and broadsided that car, if you go to the crash preventability guides from the FMCSA, all broadside crashes are preventable. You're sitting there going, no, they're not. Well, under the definition, they are. So that's what you need to understand is get some of this stuff on making sure you have it. I told you in the beginning that we're freezing time, collecting all this information. The other thing I'm going to tell you is in trucking, whether you're running a line haul contract or you're running a DOT operation, you are running those businesses in anticipation of litigation. It's going to happen. I don't care if your driver was completely not at fault for the accident. There is going to be litigation. I had this discussion with the AO this week is the cost of defense for a commercial truck accident is roughly $250,000. Okay. So if the insurance company can get it settled for $100,000, they saved $150,000. I get that from AOs a lot of time. They settled that claim for $100,000. That's ridiculous. That they saved $150,000. That is where we are in the world of our country with the lawyers on the billboard and the plaintiff's bar. That's how it works. So I want you to understand everything I'm talking about today. That's what you're facing, even if your driver's not at fault. I just went through a lot of this on the preventability and all that. Just again, get those two guides, and those will help you to have a better understanding of that, and getting all the facts together to know what's really going on. Okay, great. You attended the webinar. John taught me how to investigate an accident and collect all the information and what to do. We're not done, but wait, there's more. You're going to take all of that information, and what I want you to get in the habit of is doing a post-accident analysis. So the AO I met with this week, he said a statement to me that said, I was really doing well up until October last year, and then I had a string of incidents, and something changed in October. He had in his brain, something's changed. John, I need you to help me figure out what that is that caused that change. He's doing that root cause analysis. I was doing really good up until last October. Something changed, and getting to it. You're going to do the same thing after an accident. We get into these situations with line haul where your driver gets safety disqualified. We do curative training to the driver, and okay, we're done. I got my driver back driving. They're back active. They're driving and all that. But you might need to do more. Your BC may need to get in the truck with them. May need to do a ride along. May need to look at their following distance. Need to look at their speed. May need to look at where the cell phone is mounted in the truck. Are they using a headset with both ears covered, which is illegal? Is the inside of the tractor set up properly? Do you have the way to encourage them to wear their seatbelt? I'm talking about drivers that are heavier or bigger. Do you need a seatbelt adapter? Look at the causes of what happened to it, and don't leave it just at that. Do I need to have a driver meeting with the rest of my drivers? Hey, John had an accident last night. This is what happened. This is the investigation. Should we have a meeting on this? Yeah, probably have a meeting. I'd have a meeting with my BCs first and go, what the heck happened in this? Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's figure out what happened. Everything led up to that point. The driver was in the wrong lane. They weren't paying attention. The other driver was in the wrong lane, not paying attention, whatever. It's an incident on the yard. I dropped a trailer. I hit a gate. I backed into a pole. What was the cause that led up to that? And then you got to train the humans to not do that again. That's where the video training is great, but getting in the actual truck and doing all this. One of the things I did this week with the contractor is we put a set of doubles together, and I said to the drivers, you need 9 connection photos on this set of doubles. Start at the lead trailer, take that, fifth wheel, lock fifth wheel, the dolly, the cables on the trailers and all that. Had no idea that they need to take 9 photos for a set of doubles to cover you. you, the AO, to cover you. So if a disconnect happens, to make sure that you have the right documentation on that. But if you don't have those 9 photos and your driver has a disconnect, how are you getting to the root cause analysis of what happened? Were the hoses not hooked up right from the tractor to the lead trailer? Was it high hooked under the fifth wheel of the tractor? Did you get the picture of the jaws locked around the kingpin? How did that look? Is the handle bent on the fifth wheel? Is the pintle hook checked? One of the pictures I had them doing is have the driver take a picture of their thumb on the pintle hook showing that the pintle hook is locked. They didn't think about that. The yoke shank on the front of the dolly, did you get a picture of it showing it's flush? The handle is not bent on the dolly. The no high hook. This. I had some drivers this week that didn't know they were responsible for making sure the cables on the back of the trailer doors are engaged. They said that's Linehaul's responsibility. And I go, it's your responsibility if that door flies open. All of that is going to the root cause analysis of figuring out what's happening. So if you're having disconnects, you better be having your drivers take 9 photos of the connections and that they do it in that order, and they do it. Here's the other thing that happened with that, and this is where the problem of training the humans on this, the drivers, is we did all that training and then we started looking at the inspections the day after. So we did the training, they went out, 2 turns, did their pictures, they got them 50% right. Some of the pictures were blurry, some of the pictures weren't right. They didn't take enough of the pictures and all that. And we had just done the training. It's like building a habit. It takes 30 days, 40 days, and your BCs have got to be on these guys to say, look, I reviewed your trailer pictures. They weren't right. You got to do this. The AO came up with a great idea. He took the 9 pictures, put them on a document. He's laminating them. He's going to use that as a visual aid for the BC on the lot at the tractor that says, when I tell you to take a picture of the hoses from the tractor to the lead trailer, it better look like this picture right here. When I tell you to take a picture of the jaws locked around the fifth wheel, it better look like this. It's the same thing on everything that these guys do. We did the same thing on the door pull procedures. We did the same thing on the hazmat procedures. Everything is thinking about what the human is doing, and then they follow that and getting to this root cause analysis on what led up to that. I haven't mentioned this in this, and we're talking about accidents, but I'm going to mention it now, is fatigue. You've got to talk to your drivers about their home life. What's going on? Are they having problems at home? Are they having sickness at home? Do they play video games all day? I can generally catch a driver that is a big gamer, and when I say big, they drive all night, get off at 8, take the kids to school, come home, get on the Xbox or the PS5, whatever number we're up to, and they start running with their crew, gaming until 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And how do I catch them? They'll leave the terminal, they'll drive for an hour, they'll take a 30-minute break. They'll drive 2 more hours, take a 30-minute break. They'll drive 2 more hours and take a 30-minute break. That's how I know that's what's going on. And as soon as I talk to the driver about it, I go, what are you doing at home? I'm really into whatever game it is that they're into. And what's going on is they're not getting enough sleep, or they don't have the right rules at the house. They don't have the sign on the doorbell that says, don't ring the doorbell, or, take care of the dog, or tell the significant other, I've got to get my sleep. You've got to start there to get to the root cause analysis of what's going on with this. Post-accident drug and alcohol. We miss this a lot. If your driver is involved in a DOT recordable accident, if it's a fatality, a post-accident drug and alcohol test is mandatory. If it's an injury that is taken away from the scene, it is mandatory. If your vehicle or another vehicle is towed from the scene, it's mandatory. So what's the procedure? Call Linehaul. This is what happened. I've got a driver that was involved in a tow accident that they are being towed from the scene. It's the highway patrol. I know it's a DOT recordable accident because I have the roadside inspection. I need to get this driver tested. Where do you need me to send them? That's the protocol. Same thing on a fatality. I'll give you an example of a fatality I handled for a contractor. This driver was, I think it was Interstate 40 again, in the middle of Arizona. In the middle of Arizona, and it was involved in a bad accident, and there was no clinic, no hospital nearby. You've got to do the alcohol test within 2 hours. I had to have the driver. They called me on the weekend. I talked to the highway patrol officer and said, can you do me a solid? Can you administer a breathalyzer test to my driver and take a video and photo of that test at that time? The officer said yes. That's not always the case. Officer can say that's not my job on that. And we could have been really screwed over on that. But the officer did me a solid, did that, and driver was fine on that. Driver was released 6 hours later. He had to drive 2.5 hours to the next town. Him and had to go to the hospital and do the drug test within the allotted time on getting it done. So think about that as if you have a fatality or major injury or a tow-away accident that is DOT recordable, you're under the clock on getting these. So here, what's the bad thing? Well, the bad thing is your driver tests positive for things that you didn't want them to test positive. That's one thing. But the other bad thing is if you don't follow the guidelines to get that testing done, again, the lawyer's going to use that against you, and then it's going to be problematic for you that you didn't do the right thing afterwards. So make sure you do that. Now, take the DOT part of it away. You may still want to do drug and alcohol testing of your driver after any bodily injury accident. Again, remember what I said earlier. The other lawyer is in the courtroom and says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the driver could have been impaired, but we don't know because the contractor did not do a post-drug and alcohol test on that. Now, it's a slippery slope there because we have drivers and we have a lot of medical marijuana states and a lot of different things out there that can cause a positive test on that. So if you send the driver and it tests positive, you just can't throw it away because you're going to be asked in a deposition, did you do a post-accident drug and alcohol test? Yes. And you don't want to perjure yourself on that. But you may want to think about that as a get out of jail free card on the accident, even though it's not DOT recordable. That was a lot. I feel like I got on my soapbox again. Make sure, again, really work on the procedures. Have the written procedures. That's step one. Really work with organizing your tractor with your paperwork to make sure your driver knows where things are and what to do after an accident. Make it crystal clear whether they're calling us or calling you or your manager to call that number first. Don't call Linehaul. You got to collect the information. The AO has to report it to Linehaul. Just make sure that we're following the chain of command on that. Really watch the Vetter camera. Get all the material and the information out of the Vetter camera and secure it. If it's a serious accident, make sure you keep the Vetter camera, not just the SD card. Photographs, we talked about that, really looking at that, figuring out the cause and the root analysis, possibly taking a recorded statement from your driver just in case it's going to be a lengthy litigation process. You know it's going to be because of what happened. Getting the information up to Linehaul quickly and doing what you're supposed to be doing there, and just making sure all of this stuff I've talked about today, that it gets to some type of digital box that the AO controls because of turnover. You don't want it on some BC's laptop or some driver or a piece of it over here or a piece of it over there. Anyway, I'm going to go see what kind of questions we have. I really appreciate y'all attending this. Yeah, so for the person asked the question, do we gather the logs for our customers? Yes, everything I talked about in this webinar is what we are, what we're looking at and gathering to try to get all this information. I really appreciate you attending the webinar. I hope you learned something from this. If you're looking for, I mentioned some forms, like if you don't have an accident report or a witness cards or things like that, we have those. I was saying you can make those, but I'll be happy to send them to you if you want it. If you're one of our customers, we're doing it internally anyway on this stuff. But I really appreciate y'all being here today, and till the next one, appreciate it.